We've got Joey Smallhands. He's 7.5 inches long. From fingertip to wrist, Joey likes to play on his lap, so he's going for a large controller. He enjoys the premium feel, that's why he's chosen the Hot 42 M Ultra. I often get asked, which Leverless should I buy? And whilst I try my best to answer the question on a case-by-case basis, it mostly boils down to one thing. What do you prefer? But I get it, if you have no idea what your options are, how do you even know what you might prefer? If someone asks which color do you want, you're going to make a more informed choice if you know what colors are available. In this video, I'm going to break down everything I know about choosing a Leverless controller, so when you look at a list of features, you can make sense of it and how it applies to your preferences. Whether you're just jumping in and looking to get your first controller, or you're deciding which one to add to your ever-expanding collection, I hope you find this video helpful. Let's start with an easy topic, size. These generally come in small, large and extra large form factors. They will vary by shape and a few millimeters here or there, but should mostly fit into these categories. Small controllers are great for desk play because you'll have a generous, stable platform to lay it on. And if you're a desk minimalist like myself, it can just live in a spot on your desk, ready to plug in and play. I don't recommend these for lap players because they have a tendency to move around and can be fidgety, so that you're sometimes trying to hold it in place whilst banging out 16-hit combos. There are small controllers that are decent for lap play, these two are good examples, but they will never beat large controllers if you enjoy spreading out to ventilate your bits. Large controllers will sit comfortably on your legs whether you have them near your knees or your stomach. They're good for desk play too, but finding a spot for them to live is a bit more difficult if you want to access it quickly. You might require a stand or even a rack if you need to store a collection. Large controllers are also great if you have lazy hands. I have lazy hands, so I tend to rest my palms on the more generous space around the chin area of the controller. This isn't best practice if you want to avoid long-term damage to your hands. You're supposed to float them like you're playing piano, but I'm a creature of habit, what can I say? They are a bit more troublesome to take on the road, but a standard laptop sleeve or carry case by Hot 42 will solve that. Some extra large controllers come with their own carry cases packed in. As well as having the same pros as large controllers, XL controllers will have that old school feeling of size and weight. If the controller is art moddable, that also means more real estate for your unique designs. So the bottom line is this: small controllers, great for mobility and minimalists; large controllers, great for lap play; extra large controllers, great for a chunky, authentic feel, but not as mobile. Let's talk about the build of the controller. What is the body made of? Broadly speaking, you can go for an acrylic stack where the PCB and guts of the controller are sandwiched between layers of acrylic. You can get a plastic body, an aluminium body, or something that combines these main ingredients. Aluminium usually feels the most premium, but could pick up more fingerprints depending on if it has a smooth or coarse finish. A coarse finish like the one on the Ultra Gen 2 will be stronger against hand grime than the Razer Kitsune, for example. Plastic is generally lighter than aluminium, and button presses can sound loud and hollow. Aluminium tends to sound sharp, and acrylic models are often darker and softer. Those are just broad rules because designers might add different elements to change that sound. The most obvious one is adding foam inside aluminium and plastic bodies to take away some of the loudness and sharpness. Craftier collectors might even stick masking tape to the underside of the PCB to add some creaminess. If you're into mechanical keyboards, you'll be familiar with these practices already, since these tools are basically siblings. Modding is a great way to fine-tune how you'd like your controller to look, sound, and feel. If you don't care about modding, that's fine. There are quite a few controllers out there that are designed to be used as they come. For example, the Razer Kitsune, 8-bit DOIO, Corsair Novablade Pro and Varmilo FK2. All of these controllers are good in their own way, but you have to play by their rules because modding is either impossible or very difficult. You have to wait for them to release official replacement parts or find specialist Etsy sellers. So what options do we have for looks? The biggest factor is art. I'm not going to go into the details of art modding now, but the gist is that most controllers that are art moddable will have their templates available online. You can either go through the whole process of designing, printing, and cutting all the holes yourself, or get it done by a service. Most of the websites and designers out there will charge you about £20 to £30 to print and cut your design. Acrylic stack controllers can be fiddly to undo and put back together, but will you be changing your art often enough for it to be annoying? Aluminium and plastic controllers are difficult because you'll have to print art on a sticker and hope you don't mess it up. ThingsGeek on Instagram has a great technique involving water that he swears by. You basically have to use just enough water to allow the sticker to slide around into place and wait for it to dry. Genius. There are some controllers doing very cool things in this space. For example, Hot42 have several models that come with a removable panel that involves 0 screws. Just press the button and the panel pops up. They even include pre-cut art options and blank papers you can draw or paint on. Corsair hasn't released their replaceable aluminium panels yet, but they did say that their aim is to eventually get some licensed art panels out, so fingers crossed for a Kami waifu release soon. The other thing we can change for aesthetics are the button caps. If you're especially creative, you might be able to find the perfect design or shape to match your art. And button caps aren't just about looks, they can also contribute to the sensation on your fingers with ABS plastics that are smooth and durable but easier to grease up, or PBT keycaps that usually have a grainier texture and fockier sound. A lot of players enjoy putting rubber O-rings under their caps to help with silencing, but this does affect how they feel, so make sure you'll be happy with that nuance if you go for O-rings. Foam pads like the ones on Hot42's P12 Pro will have a similar effect of dampening sound and changing the feel. Size is also a consideration with button caps. They usually come in 22 to 25mm, but you don't have much leeway when modding for cap size. In most cases, you should just stick with the same size that came with the controller. I've always found smaller button caps to be more comfortable, but the spacing also plays a factor, and we'll get back to that in a bit. Finally, the last thing we might want to mod are the switches. You'll have to get the correct type of switches for your controller. These will either be low profile, MX or Hall effect, and they'll also fall under linear, tactile and clickies. Linears will go down and up with little variance. Tactiles will have a gentle bump on the way down, and clickies will feel and sound the way you expect. The options are growing quite rapidly. Some feel fast, some slow, and you can choose ones that have a shorter travel distance. That means the amount your finger goes down before it bottoms out happens sooner. You can go for ones that are quieter, or choose something that pops up faster, has a different sound, so on and so forth. Make sure you're reading descriptions and looking up reviews for the ones you're interested in. MX switches are larger and won't be compatible with controllers that take low profiles. You'll find there is much more choice when it comes to MX switches because they've been around for longer, but they should generally fit the three main categories I mentioned above. Hall effect switches come under different names, and generally these are only compatible with controllers that are designed with them in mind. And the technology will allow you to alter the point where the switch will activate and reset by the millimeter. Controllers that use Hall effect switches are still quite expensive, but I've heard on a grapevine that you might see this technology in budget controllers soon, like the Hot42 range. Most Leverless controllers are designed to allow you to change your switches without dismantling it first, which is fantastic, but they also usually come packaged with the most awful switch pullers on the planet. So do pick up your own switch puller if you intend to do this often. I've been using this one by Wuque Studio for almost 2 years now, and I can personally recommend it due to its strength and ease of use. It's made of titanium and comes in 3 different colors, which you can find in the link below. So to wrap up the modding section, you would ask yourself, how easy is it to change the things you want to change, and how often will you be doing it? I grew up playing on arcade sticks that only had 6 action buttons, so the modern 8 button stuff is plenty for me. But a lot of you out there have special needs. No, not that kind of special needs. Well, maybe that kind of special needs. Beyond those main 8, you will have left, down, right, and jump. Every Leverless controller will have at least these 12 buttons in their layout. Here's where it gets interesting. You can choose a controller that has peripheral buttons. Most commonly, they will be here, 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 or maybe it will have all the buttons ever created. This one is for your index or middle. This one can be used as an alternative up button for those who like the WASD layout, or for arcade games. The cultured ones among you might enjoy the occasional shmup, for example. The pinky button is a pinky button, not much else to say about that. And this one here is my favorite. It's quite interesting, and its functionality depends on if it's placed closer to the action buttons or lower down near the jump. If it's up here, it's less useful for people who jump with their right thumb, because if you use this as a right thumb jumper, your thumb has to travel all the way over here. It's quicker to use your index or have it resting there and jump with your left thumb. At certain angles, having this button up here can also cause accidental inputs if you use your thumb for action buttons. So you might have to adjust your playstyle until you get used to it. When the button is down here closer to the jump, it's easily accessible to the right thumb because it will activate with just a quick slide. The Hot 42 Ultra is a controller that has both of these buttons placed down here, allowing the same level of access whether you jump with the left or right thumb. And then we have split layouts, which guarantees you can jump with either thumb and has a bit more spacing for ergonomics. Some people find these more comfortable. I've never had a problem with the standard layout, but if you start to feel pain, then it's worth giving this layout a try. There are even specialist designed controllers to further mitigate RSI. This one is the Vertibox, and you can find a review for it on my channel. Let's talk more about spacing. Spacing is the gap between the buttons. If you have smaller hands, larger gaps will require you to shift away from your resting position to reach some of the buttons. One thing that makes a big difference when it comes to spacing is the distance between your bottom left action button and the jump. If the jump is too far away, you might find that your hand needs to stay constantly stretched open to access both of these quickly. This is not a good or a bad thing, it's simply preference. Some people like that feeling of a wider spacing because that's mostly what arcade machines felt like. I myself like to have everything in reach with limited movement, so I like to have a tighter spacing. If you have clumsy hands like myself, be careful with a tight spacing on smaller controllers that have many buttons. You'll need to adjust your playstyle to avoid unintentional inputs. And you also have to be careful with controllers with a lot of spacing but small button caps. You might find it will take some practice in the early days to get used to the controller, so you don't end up hitting a whole load of nothing during a sweaty moment. With spacing, you'd have to ask yourself, do I want to have my hands relaxed, or am I happy to stretch out a bit as I play? Leverless controllers are not universally compatible, so make sure the one you choose works on your gaming system of choice. Most will work with PC, Switch 1 and 2, Android and Apple devices. You have to be careful if you're playing on PS5 and Xbox because these two rarely cross over in terms of compatibility. Officially licensed controllers can add about £50 to £100 on top of the controller cost because Sony wants their P's. An option here is to invest in a Brook converter. These cost around £40 and will convert your controller to the intended console. They do have a large footprint though, and not all of them can be plugged directly into the controller itself. Some Brook converters have to be plugged into the console, which can be annoying depending on your setup. GP2040 based controllers are a good option here because they're compatible with almost everything. PS5 and Xbox players can get the Boota 5 or Boota X and plug these into the EXT port of the GP2040 controllers, and these have a conveniently small footprint. If you enter tournaments and locals, I strongly recommend you focus on PC and PS5 compatibility because a lot of event organizers will use one of these systems. Most people swear by a wired connection because they're reliable, and any disconnect during a tournament will have you forfeit the match. But don't disregard a wireless controller completely because they do have their merits too. First of all, wireless technology has come a long way, and the newer controllers have minimal latency to the point that most of us won't even notice. And if you have children or pets running around, you'll mitigate a lot of expensive accidents since there won't be any cables to trip over. My favorite reason for using a wireless controller is for the convenience. You're only going to get better on fighting games with practice, and being able to pick up your wireless controller, turn on the machine and get going without the need to untangle or worry about packing things away removes an additional barrier to getting your sessions in. If you do end up going to a tournament, every wireless leverless controller will have a wired mode, so you're getting the best of both worlds. We're at a stage where the software in most leverless controllers are good enough that you just don't have to worry about it. They should have all the essentials like button mapping, turbo modes, RGB settings, and broad compatibility. Officially licensed controllers will probably make their own in-house software, and it's expected that they will work until the end of the PS5, Series X, or Switch lifecycle, depending on who they hold the license for. With unlicensed controllers, this is determined by how well the company is doing a few years down the line. If it goes bust, then your controller probably won't get updates and bug fixes. I mentioned the GP2040 CE software earlier. You'll find this in a lot of budget and mid-range controllers. It's maintained by a talented group of people, and whilst it's feature-packed and versatile, it does rely on passionate volunteers, so we have to hope that interest in this space remains healthy. One thing you might want to look out for are web configurators. These will allow you to make key changes to your controller without the need to install anything on a computer. You just plug the controller into any device that has access to a web browser, put the address in, and you've got full control. GP2040 controllers have this feature, but other controllers might rely on installed apps, for example the 8-bit DOIO models. whilst others like the Razer Kitsune use onboard combinations to make changes. In my opinion, this is the biggest consideration to make when it comes to software. How often will you make changes to your keybinds, actuation distances and stuff like that? And do you need it to be convenient and foolproof? We're currently in the golden age of leverless controllers, and you'll find that all of them have a high polling rate, low latency, turbo modes, RGB. Functionally, they are identical, or at least very close with exceptions. So it's now quite common for manufacturers to give you a little extra. These can come in various forms like travel solutions, replacement parts, and storage solutions. For example, we have travel bags bundled in with the Varmilo FK2 and Hot 42 X series. I'm very fond of what Brook has done with their Starburst. This has an integrated protective flap and a removable strap. And the Varmilo Kasai has a storage compartment for spares in case something goes wrong during a full day tournament and you need to repair it right away. I am cheating a bit because the Kasai is a hybrid controller, not a full leverless, but you get the gist. These are the kinds of bells and whistles that don't directly affect how the controller performs, but can be good for your convenience. Right, let's put this system together with some examples. We've got Joey Smallhands. He's 7.5 inches long, from fingertip to wrist, and 3.5 inches wide. This guy is my hand twin. Joey likes to play on his lap, so he's going for a large controller. He enjoys the premium feel, so he's decided on aluminium. He wants to use low travel switches, in this case the Shadow Huntings. He doesn't want to move his hands all over the place and likes to keep a relaxed stance over his controller, so he's going for a smaller spacing with smaller button caps. That's why he's chosen the Hot 42 M Ultra. Traveling Tiffany, as her name might suggest, is always going to locals, nationals, internationals. Basically, if there's a chance to play against people in person, she's going to be there. But with all that traveling, she needs something easy to carry. So she wants a smaller body. Modding isn't essential to her, but it's nice to have. Layout isn't a big deal. As long as she has the regular 12 buttons, she's happy. After all, she only has 2 thumbs and 8 fingers. She'll need it to run on PC and PS5 since she's most likely to encounter these on her travels. And how about some sort of protection since that controller is going in and out of her backpack regularly? For Tiffany, we have the Brook Fighter Starburst. Now, Professional Pete. He's a bit like Tiffany. He likes to play in person and he likes them big and he cannot lie. He wants an extra large controller on his lap. He's got money from his tournament winnings, so he's going for a premium body. He doesn't have time to mod his art or button caps and switches. Pete can master any setup he's given, baby. Spacing isn't a huge factor for him, but he might need software to fine-tune the actuation of his buttons. He's going to be hitting the lab every day for hours and wants to get in and out of his sessions quickly, because you can't just sit in the same spot and play video games all day non-stop, right? So low latency wireless would be fantastic for him. The Corsair Novablade Pro would be a great choice for Pete. Last we have Fickle Fred. He changes waifu every few months, so he needs to swap his art regularly. That's literally his only criteria. I don't even know if he plays games, he just likes to mod his controllers. He's going to enjoy the Hot 42 C16, 16S or the C80. There are exceptions to pretty much everything I've said in this video. So if you spot a controller that looks good to you, please do the research, ask for opinions, and watch some video reviews. I have plenty here on my channel, so check those out and pay attention to the sections that are important to you. Ultimately, practice trumps everything. As a human being, you can get used to and good at anything if you put the time in. So in most cases, it's best to just get a controller and start practicing. From there, you'll probably get a good idea of what you like, and if need be, you'll fine-tune your requirements for an upgrade. Don't get crippled by choice waiting for the perfect controller, because there isn't one. Thanks for joining me today. Save and refer back to this video if you ever need it in the future. Share it with your friends to help them on their leverless journey, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. Links for everything mentioned in this video are below, and I'll see you in the next one.